Greetings and welcome back. We are in Senior English A, and our objective now for the hour is to work with Hamlet 2. We're going to finish with our observations about Hamlet 2, and then we will be listening to the text itself. Polonius has just come onto the stage in 2-2 to tell the king and queen that he understands now why Hamlet has lost his mind. He pulls out, this is Shakespeare's, remember Shakespeare is a great poet. He wrote those famous sonnets, right? But Shakespeare likes to make fun of other guys who write bad poetry. And so he has Hamlet write a really kind of lame set of lines that apparently he must have given to Ophelia. And they run something like this. Doubt thou the stars are fire, doubt that the sun doth move, doubt truth to be a liar, but never doubt I love. Oh dear Ophelia, I am ill at these numbers. I have not art to reckon my groans, blah, blah, blah. Mama can't believe it, which tells us something. Hamlet and Ophelia's, how does one say it politely, union has been something that Mama did not know about. Another argument is that she's been so interested in getting together with her guy, you know what I'm saying, that she hasn't been paying as close attention to Hamlet. Or Hamlet's been pretty discreet in his getting together with Ophelia, and now a note is produced. Polonius will say it this way. I know what's going on. Hamlet has gone love mad. He stopped eating, he stopped sleeping, and now he's gone crazy all over my daughter. Take this, he says, from this if I'm wrong. In other words, you can cut my head off if I'm wrong. Of course, the audience sees some irony in this because, of course, he is wrong. Hamlet has gone crazy because he's faking madness so that he can spy again on his stepdad and ultimately execute his stepdad. That's the whole point of Hamlet's insanity. We then will have a very famous scene where Polonius will say, you know what, I'm going to talk to the young kid and I'm going to take care of business. And I'm now roughly by about line 170 or so, depending on the folio you're working with, where Polonius will come onto the stage and Hamlet and Polonius will meet. Now this is significant, and I have to explain it to you so that you can see it in your mind's eye. Hamlet, and this will be our first time to see him. We've heard about what he looks like, but we haven't seen him as gone nuts yet. Hamlet will come on stage without shoes on usually. He'll come on stage with his hair like all wacko. He'll come on stage with his shirt basically undone and hanging out. In other words, it's usually an actor's way to show Hamlet's lost it. And he's carrying a book, and he's reading from the book. And as he comes onto the stage, he literally will walk almost right into Polonius. And again, he's faking like he's crazy. And Polonius will look at him right into his face like this and go, hello, like that. Now the audience realizes Hamlet is acting. Get it? An actor is acting. Do you understand? The levels. It's like watching it. It's like peeling an onion when you play with the play Hamlet. It's like peeling. There's always, or parfait if you're a Shrek fan. There's always layers upon layers to what's going on. Hello, and then he goes, "Do you know me, my lord?" To which Hamlet's response is, "Excellent. Well, you're a fishmonger." Now the pit audience is going to die laughing at this. What he means is you're a pimp. You have a group of women who you sell out at nighttime as your prostitutes so you can make money. Okay. Calls him a pimp. And Polonius will come back with, no, that's not me. And then Hamlet says, excellent, well, he says you're a fishmonger. And Polonius says, no, not me. And Hamlet comes back and says, oh, right. Calling you a fishmonger or a pimp is an insult to pimps. You're way worse than that. He says, I wish you were so honest a man. And for your notes, that's one of the really important themes of this play is the theme of honesty. Telling the truth. Remember, it's the queen who says, why do you seem so upset? And Hamlet's like, whoa, I don't seem. I am really upset. I have that within which passeth, do you remember what the word is? Show. These but the trappings and the suits of woe. In other words, I'm not just acting, I'm for reals. The next thing Hamlet says is interesting. He says, do you have a daughter? Have you a daughter, my lord? Now remember, this is ironic because Polonius is certain that Hamlet has gone crazy because he's in love with his daughter. He goes, do you have a daughter? Polonius is like, yeah, I have a daughter. Hamlet will then say, well, let her not walk in the sun. Conception is a blessing, but not as your daughter may conceive. Friend, look to it. Now there's double meaning here, and it's a dark double meaning. Do you have a daughter? Yeah. Don't let her walk out in the sun. She might get a sunburn. Okay? And conception has two meanings. It can mean, of course, to be pregnant, but it can also mean to have a sunstroke. Hamlet's playing a nasty game because, as we saw earlier when he said it to the king, S-U-N and S-O-N have the same pronunciation. In other words, you better watch out for your daughter because she could end up pregnant if she messes around with the S-O-N. That is to say, Hamlet. You got me? So the audience is like, oh, that is so sweet. Notice Polonius, what he says in an aside. How say you by that? Still harping on my daughter. See, Polonius, he can't, obviously he doesn't know what's going on. Yet he knew me not at first. He said I was a fishmonger. Oh, he's far gone, far gone. Then he'll ask Hamlet. Notice his question. What is it you read? Hamlet's got a book. And in one of the famous lines, he'll look at the book, then he'll look back at Polonius and he'll go, words, 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 which is, of course, what you do when you read. More than a few senior students have said, yeah, that's pretty much all that we ever have looked at in this. Words, words, words. Notice Polonius, what is the matter, my lord? In other words, he wants to know what kind of words are you reading. Hamlet will look around like something's wrong. And Hamlet will say, what's the matter between who? And he says, I mean, the matter that you read, my lord. And then Shakespeare will quote from the great Roman satirist Juvenal, who writes about old men and how when they get old, their butt muscles get so flabby that they start to sag and they look like crabs going backwards when they walk. And they can't walk very well and they have bad eyes. In other words, he's making fun of the old fart Polonius. Ultimately, Polonius will say, though this be madness, yet there is method in it. In other words, Polonius has a sense that there's something going on here. He just doesn't know what. And then he asks, will you walk out of the air? My lord, in other words, are you gonna go outside today? Hamlet says, into my grave? Polonius says, well, yeah, that is out of the air. Notice he says, as another aside, Polonius says, indeed, how pregnant sometimes his replies are. Pregnant here, playing off of the game of conception, but also, of course, pregnant here meaning full of double meaning, which is, of course, true for the audience. You bet they are. Notice he says, he says, I'll take my leave of you, to which Hamlet's response is, you cannot, sir, take from me anything I will more willingly part with all. In other words, I'm really glad you're leaving me. I don't want to be in your presence. But then he pauses and he says, accept my life, accept my life, accept my life. In other words, I'm not ready to die yet. It's clear that Hamlet now is really thinking about this whole thing of suicide. But now the death thing has shifted. If he's going to kill a king, the likelihood is he's probably not going to walk away from that. In other words, he's gone from, I wish I could kill myself because I'm so depressed about the fact my mom married my dad too. Now I'm going to have to kill the king of Denmark, my uncle, and I'm probably not going to have a really good way to explain why I got to kill this cat, which means ultimately I probably myself am going to end up dead. So Hamlet has good reason to be thinking about death. Not just the death of his father, but of course the fact that he's going to have to jack his own uncle. Onto the stage comes Rosencrantz and Guildenstern. Remember, their job is to spy on him. Now, R and G are old school pals of Hamlet. And so immediately when they show up, they go back to, well, what do they say about boys will be boys? They go back to boys and locker room humor. So right away, Hamlet says, so, how about Fortune as a woman? So, you guys and Fortune, the woman, have you been on her cap? In other words, you have really good luck. Or have you been on the bottom of her feet? She's been walking all over you. How are you doing in regards to Fortune? Rosencrantz and Guildenstern respond, well, we kind of like to lie about the middle of Fortune, between her legs, in other words. To which Hamlet immediately comes back and says, you're absolutely right, Fortune is a complete strumpet is his word, we would today say slut. She will sleep with anybody, in other words, ha ha ha. Of course, the pit audience is going to love this kind of thing. Ha, it's so funny, sometimes you have good luck, sometimes you have bad luck, and that's because Fortune is a slut, blah, blah, blah. And then all of a sudden, things become very serious. And they'll go through this little joking back and forth. What's up with Hamlet? Why are you this way? And then ultimately, they're going to get down to the heart of the matter. And Hamlet's going to look right at Rosencrantz and Guildenstern and say, you're here to spy on me, aren't you? And they both will kind of look at each other like, oh, what do we say? And Hamlet's like, see, I got my eye on you. And then ultimately they will say, yeah, we are here to spy on you. And Hamlet will say, I'll tell you why. This is why my dad and mom, stepdad and mom, are interested in trying to figure out what's wrong with me. And in a really famous set of lines, Hamlet will say it, roughly line, let's call it 305, 306, 307. As I start to read these lines, you'll find them in your folio. I'll tell you why, he says, and so shall my anticipation prevent your discovery and your secrecy to the king and moult no feather, and queen and moult no feather. I have of late, are you with me? Does everybody see where we are? I have of late, wherefore I know not, lost all my mirth. Mirth is happiness. He says, I'm kind of sad, he says. I've lost all my mirth, foregone all custom of exercises, and indeed it goes so heavily with my disposition that this goodly frame, the earth, seems to me a sterile premonitory. In other words, he says, the world is like nothing will grow. What did he say earlier about the world? An unweeded garden, remember? Now he says nothing will grow. It's like a wasteland. It's like, he says, the world basically is like what we look at when we ride between Worland and, and Tensleep, for example. There's nothing out there, if you will. It's just kind of barren. Right? This most excellent canopy, the air, look you, the brave o'erhanging firmament, this majestical roof fretted with golden fire, why it appears no other thing to me than a foul and pestilent congregation of vapors. In other words, there is no meaning in the universe. Everything is dead, or soon to be dead. And he says, that just kind of makes me really sad. And then he pauses, and he goes, what a piece of work is a man. Let's think about humans for a moment. Now, the Renaissance view of humans was that humans are amazing in regards to their minds, in regards to their bodies. I mean, think about all the art from the Renaissance. Most of the males who are sculptured are standing what? I mean, when I took a group of students to Athens and Rome, they were stunned. It's like, dude, every time we turn around, there's like naked men standing around and naked women standing around. Only these men and women are drop-dead gorgeous sculptures. Literally, when you stand and look at it, you cannot believe how unbelievably real these stone figures look, but they're all naked, showing fully body parts as well. The Renaissance celebrated the human body. Shakespeare's going to now make Hamlet say, why does everyone make such a big deal about humans? What a piece of work is a man. Notice what he says. How noble in reason. Wow, humans are so smart. How infinite in faculty. They can think about anything. In form and moving, how express and admirable. Watch an athlete perform, or a dancer, and it's quite beautiful. In action, how like an angel. In apprehension or thinking, how like a god. The beauty of the world, the paragon of animals, the best of all animals. And yet, to me, what is this quintessence of dust? Hamlet says, you want me to tell you what a human being is? A bunch of dirt walking around with a little water. That's all a human is. Quintessence means the best of nothing more than dirt. Which, of course, technically, don't want to break anyone's heart here, that's really what you are. If you die and we lay you in the Badlands and come back a few months later, you will already begin to deteriorate. If we come back 5 years later, it will be really hard to find any of you. Why? Because you've gone back to the dirt. Dust thou art, to dust returnest. Remember? That's that notion. He says, in the end, really, what is a human being? Absolutely nothing. Then he finishes by saying, man delights not me. No, nor woman neither. And then all of a sudden when he says, man delights not me, Rosencrantz and Guildenstern look at each other and go, of course, they've been told why Hamlet's gone nuts. Why has he gone nuts? Because he's in love with a woman. And when Hamlet says, man delights not me, I'm really not into men. Rosencrantz and Guildenstern, their minds are always in the gutter. And so the minute he says, I'm not into men, they both go, yeah, we know all about what you're into. And then he says, nor woman neither, but by your smiling. He says, what's up with the smiling between the two of you? To which Rosencrantz and Guildenstern then go, oh, no, we didn't mean anything by that. Other than to say, if you're not interested in human beings, you're really going to be upset because we invited some actors. We were on the road, and we invited some actors to come with us so they could perform a little play for you. But dude, if you're not happy with humans, you're not going to enjoy the actors. And then all of a sudden, and that's why I told you it's really hard to play this role if you're an actor playing the role of Hamlet. All of a sudden, Hamlet goes from being really morose and a downer to fully animated and very excited. What? They're actors here? Awesome! Like a little kid. He's like a little kid all of a sudden. Awesome! Actors? I love actors. He who plays the king will be especially welcome. Ooh, meaning what? Right, he already sees his uncle, Claudius, as nothing more than a fake king, an actor, if you will. Then the actors all come on stage. And they kind of know Hamlet from when he was in the city in school. They have a back and forth. And then Hamlet plays a little game that actors love to play, where he says, hey, why don't you give us some lines from a famous set of lines, like a poem or whatever. And they're like, what lines do you want? Hamlet says, I got just the lines. These are the lines that I want. And he requests lines from a classic poem called the Aeneid, where the hero Aeneas is telling Dido, his lover, about how Troy fell, because Aeneas was a warrior at Troy. Aeneas says it was quite remarkable. The city of Troy was in complete shambles, because remember they used that wooden badger to get inside the city of Troy and all of that, right? And, and the city is falling and all of that, right? And Aeneas tells Dido, old King Priam and his wife Hecuba wanted to get out of the city of Troy. And so they're running through the city of Troy. Priam's got his wife's hand. And he's old. He's an old fart. And he's running through this, and there's people dying, and there's smoke, and screaming and crying, and they're trying to get away. And all of a sudden, Priam, the king, looks up, and he sees the warrior Pyrrhus. And we're told Pyrrhus wears black armor and is completely covered in blood and guts. And he's just like slashing. He's just killing everything he can see. I mean, just all over him, blood and guts. And he's so enraged that it's taken him so long as a Greek warrior to get inside the city of Troy. He's so enraged that we're told his eyes are red, like they're on fire. For those of you that ever watched the old Terminator films, you maybe now understand the source here of that bad monster guy having red eyes. It comes from this motif of you're so enraged. And all of a sudden he looks up, he sees old man Priam, and he goes, Priam! And Priam's just like frozen like a rabbit, Aeneas says. And then all of a sudden he turns with Hecuba, and he runs down an alleyway. Only it's a dead end. And at the end of the alleyway, they like run into a wall. And all of a sudden, we're told Pyrrhus turns and starts coming slowly down the alley towards Priam, who immediately falls on his knees and starts begging for his life. And his queen, moblid is the word, that is to say whimpering, as in weeping, as in sad, is standing behind him begging for her husband's life. Pyrrhus says nothing. He just simply walks up to the king, who's on his knees begging for his life. He's got this huge sword with all kinds of blood and guts falling off of it. He takes it over his head. He comes right down, and right before he hits the old man's head, he stops. And Aeneas says it was weird. It was like the whole city went dead silent for a split second. All the screaming, everything stopped. And through the mind of old man Priam the king was a memory. A memory of a night many years before when a young son of his was born in the walls of Troy. And the old blind prophet Tiresias came in and said, you better kill that kid Paris, because if you don't, he's going to grow up to be the ruin of your city. Well, the king, of course, couldn't kill his son, put him outside the city walls. Ultimately, he's the reason for the fall of Troy, because he ends up going, remember, and taking Helen away from Menelaus, bringing her from Sparta back, blah, blah, blah. And so old man Priam, dead silent, remembers that. That's the old poop moment. And then we're told Pyrrhus splits his head open like a cantaloupe, takes Hecuba, and that's the end of the city of Troy. Those are the lines that Hamlet requests. Those lines. That's what he wants to hear. And as this king this actor is reciting these lines, Polonius will point out that the actor who's reciting these lines starts to cry. He actually gets tears in his eyes. Good actors can do this. They can muster up tears really fast. Polonius is like, he's starting to cry. What's up with that? Hamlet tells old man Polonius, just shut up, I want to hear. Come to the queen, come to Hecuba. And then the actor will say a few words about Hecuba. Wait a minute, why would Hamlet want these lines recited? What from his own recent biography allows him to in any way identify with the story from the Aeneid? Why? It's all there, isn't it? Right, it's all there. This is like the ancient story, isn't it? Only in the old story, when a king gets assassinated, how does his queen respond, Hecuba? Does she run off and go, yippee, now I get to find another guy and go get married? See, this is Hamlet still working with it. How do we know that? Well, everybody leaves. But right before the actors leave, he pulls over the head actor and he goes, hey, listen, I got a question for you. If I were to get, do you know this play called The Murder of Gonzago? The actor goes, yeah, sure, we played it all the time. Okay, here's the deal. I want to play that play in front of my uncle and my mom. But I want to write a few lines that I want you to inject inside that play. Are you cool with that? And the actor's like, sure, dude, whatever you need. And then he leaves, leaving Hamlet completely alone now for the final lines of Act 2. Now, a few years ago, I lectured this play to a group of student seniors. And one of my seniors was an actor, quite accomplished, actually, actor. And as we started working through this play, he pointed out something to me that was, I think, quite brilliant. He said, the play Hamlet is really a play of classic soliloquies. Notice the earlier one, oh, that this too solid flesh would thaw, melt itself into a dew, or that Providence had not fixed his cannon against self-slaughter. Remember what he says, fie on it, fie, the world is an unweeded garden, things rank and gross in nature possess it merely. Frailty thy name is woman, to post with such dexterity to incestuous sheets, but break my heart from his whole my tongue. I've encapsulated the first act's soliloquy. Now we come to the second act's soliloquy. And he said each one of these soliloquies builds the entire construction of the play. If you know the soliloquies, you know Hamlet's frame of mind. You understand what's going on in the play. And he was absolutely right. He took the soliloquies, he memorized all of them, and he went on the road in that forensic circuit where you do that poetry recitation thing. And he did nothing more than recite the major soliloquies of this play. Of course, the most famous is in the third act, to be or not to be, that is the question, blah, 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 right? He's so good at it that they send him to nationals, the National Forensics Tournament, where he takes this thing and he goes there and he wins. It's quite fascinating. And he always argued, if you know these soliloquies, you know this play. And of course, these soliloquies are what make this play the most famous play. The second act soliloquy, now let's take a look at it real quickly. The second act soliloquy will actually begin with the now I am alone lines. Now I am alone, which is an interesting way for Hamlet to say it. He's physically alone now, that is to say a soliloquy is coming. But he's also spiritually or emotionally alone. Let's find out what's wrong with this kid, right? What is wrong with Hamlet? Take a look at what he says. Now I am alone. Oh, what a rogue and peasant slave am I. Is it not monstrous that this player here, but in a fiction, in a dream of passion, could force his soul so to his own conceit that from her working all his visage waned, tears in his eyes, distraction in his aspect, a broken voice, and his whole function suiting with forms to his conceit. He says, isn't it amazing what a good actor can do? A good actor can get so worked up, start crying, showing emotion, that you're moved by that. I mean, you're just like, whoa, whoa, whoa. But look what he says. And all for nothing. For Hecuba. It's all made up. It's a silly poem from long ago. It's all made up for Hecuba. What's Hecuba to him, or he to Hecuba, that he should weep for her? What would he do had he the motive and cue for passion that I have? In other words, if this actor knew the crap that's gone down recently in my life, man, oh man, how would he respond? Look what he says. He'd drown the stage with tears and cleave the general ear with horrid speech, make mad the guilty and appall the free, confound the ignorant and amaze indeed the very faculties of eyes and ears. Yet I, Hamlet's going to beat himself up. Have you ever thrown a temper tantrum where you were the only one there? Maybe you went in your bedroom and started throwing things around and you were talking out loud, but there was nobody else there. You're talking to yourself. Look what Hamlet does when he talks to himself and beats himself up. Look what he says. Yet I, a dull and muddy-mettled rascal, peak like John a dreams, unpregnant of my cause. What does it mean, unpregnant of my cause? And then it hits us. Dude, we've been sitting, if you've been watching this play from the very beginning, you've been sitting for over an hour and 20 minutes now, close to it. And nothing has happened. Seventh graders who I teach this play to will often say, dude, this play's like way boring. Right. That's right. That's the whole point. Nothing has happened. He's supposed to do something. What's he supposed to do? He's supposed to get revenge. But he hasn't gotten any revenge yet. He starts beating himself up about that fact. I'm pregnant of my cause and can say nothing. And then he starts getting into this thing just like he was in the last soliloquy, where he gets so worked up he can't finish his lines. You know what I mean? He can't finish his thoughts. No, not for a king upon whose property and most dear life a damned defeat was made. And then he asks, am I a coward? Who calls me villain? Breaks my pate across, who slaps me in the face? Plucks off my beard and blows it in my face. If you wanted to insult somebody in Shakespeare's day, every man, if you were a man, you wore a beard. And if you wanted to insult a man, you walked up and literally pulled hair out of his beard and then went and blew it in his face. If you did that, you were usually going to end in some kind of a duel where somebody was going to die. That was like the penultimate insult. If you pulled hair out of his beard, it obviously hurt him, and then blew it back in his face. That was basically language that said, you know, you and I gotta do something more than have words. He says, who does this to me? Gives me the lie in the throat as deep as to the lungs. Who does this, huh? In other words, he asks, what? Don't I have a reason to be really upset? Zoons, he said, I should take it, for it cannot be. Wow, here it comes. But I am pigeon-livered and lack gall to make oppression bitter. Or ere this, I should have fatted all the region kites with this slave's awful. And then he starts screaming these next lines. Bloody, bawdy villain. Talking about his uncle, right? Remorseless, treacherous, lecherous. He wants to sleep with anything that walks. Kindless villain. And then he'll scream the next lines. Oh, vengeance. And a good actor will send his voice so powerfully through the theater room that it reverberates off the walls when he screams vengeance. And you realize, whoa, 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 this kid is worked up. And then he'll pause. And it's almost as if he's throwing his temper tantrum, and then all of a sudden he does one of these. He steps out of his body and goes, oh, that was very nice acting. Very well done. Good job, good job. Like there's a second side to him. And if you're watching this on stage, it's at this moment that you actually do go, whoa, 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 is this kid actually lost his mind? Maybe he is gone nuts. When he says, oh, what an ass am I. This is most brave. That I, the son of a dear father murdered, prompted to my revenge by heaven and hell, must like a whore unpack my heart with words and fall a-cursing like a very drab scullion. He goes, oh, he says, he says, a woman who screams and cries but can do nothing. He says, what is wrong with me? And then he grabs his head like he's going nuts. Fie upon it, he uses the F word again, fie. About my brain, he says. And then all of a sudden he stops, looks directly at the audience and has a conversation with the audience. And look what he says. I've heard that guilty creatures sitting at a play have by the very cunning of the scene been struck so to the soul that presently they've proclaimed their malefactions. For murder, though it hath no tongue, will speak with most miraculous organ. He says, I've heard that if people sit in a play and they watch something that they themselves have done, they actually will give it up. They will give up that they have done it. So, for example, if they've committed a murder and then they see murder done on stage, they cannot keep from admitting it because that's the nature of art. Let's point out Shakespeare's making a really important point about drama. He'll say it later directly. Now he's saying it indirectly. Plays are like a mirror that's held up, and the audience looks into the mirror and sees themselves reflected. They learn something about themselves. Look what he says now. All right, here you go. The plan. You can write it in your notes as that. This is the plan. Hamlet's plan. I'll have these players play something like the murder of my father before mine uncle. I'll observe his looks. I'll tempt him to the quick. If he but blanch, I know my course. In other words, I'm going to watch his face. And while he's watching the play, I'm going to be watching him. And when that guy comes out and pretends like he's pouring poison in the king's ear, and then takes the crown and puts it on himself, and then takes the king's wife like this, he says, I'm going to watch my uncle. And if my uncle's face changes color, blanch, at all, I've got him. I know we did it. Why would he need to test? Look what he says. The spirit that I have seen may be the devil, and the devil hath power to assume a pleasing shape, yea, and perhaps out of my weakness and my melancholy, as he is wont, as very potent with such spirits, abuses me to damn me. He says, I may be losing my mind, and may not have actually seen that ghost and had that conversation, and that may not have really been my daddy's ghost, and because that, he says, I'll have grounds more relative than this. If I'm going to kill this old man, I got to have proof. The play's the theme. wherein I'll catch the conscience of the king. I'm gonna have him watch. So notice we're still into this spy theme. Remember? Act 2, Scene 1. We started with Polonius checking on, remember, his son, Laertes in Paris, right? And then Rosencrantz and Guildenstern shows up. Then Polonius shows up. And now Hamlet invents this idea about a play within a play. And for your notes, that's what we call it. It's the famous play within the play. The play's the thing wherein I'll catch the conscience of the king means I'm going to use the play to catch my uncle's conscience. All right, go to 2-1. And until the bell rings, we'll just listen now to the play itself. It's actually not a very long act. We'll finish tomorrow, though.
Come. Let's go together.
All right, 2-1. Here we go. We'll begin with Polonius talking to Rinaldo about, hey, go and tell lies so you can get the truth.
Give him this money and these notes, Rinaldo.
I will, my lord.
You should do marvellous wisely, good Rinaldo, before you visit him to make inquire of his behaviour.
My lord, I did intend it.
Very well said, very well said. Look here, sir. Inquire me first what danskers are in Paris, and how and who, what means and where they keep, what company at what expense. And finding by this encompassment and drift of question that they do know my son, come you more nearer than your particular demands will touch it. Take you as 'twere some distant knowledge of him. As thus I know his father and his friends, and in part him. Do you mark this, Rinaldo?
Aye, very well, my lord.
And in part him. But you may say, not well. But if be he, I mean, he's very wild, addicted so-and-so. And there put on him what forgeries you please. Marry, none so rank as may dishonour him, take heed of that. But such wanton, wild, and usual slips as our companions noted and most known to youth and liberty.
Boys will be boys, is what he
Aye,
said.
or drinking, drinking, swearing, quarrelling, driving, you may go so far.
My lord, that would dishonour him.
By his nose you may season it in the charge. You mustn't put another scandal on him when he is open to incontinence, eh? That's not my meaning. But breathe his faults so quaintly that they may seem the takes of liberty, the flesh and outbreak of a fiery mind, a savage to sin, unreclaimed blood of general assault.
But, my good lord...
Wherefore should you do this?
Aye, my lord, I would know that.
Marry, sir, here's my drift. And I believe it is a fetch of warrant. You laying these slight sullies on my son, as for a thing little soil in the working, mark you, your party in Congress, him you would sound, having ever seen in the predominant crimes the youth you breed are guilty, be assured he closes with you in this consequence. Good sir, or must know, or friend, or gentleman, according to the phrase in the edition of Man and Country.
Very good, my lord.
And does he this? He does. What was I about to say? By the matter, about to say
Oh men, they lose their mind, they lose their train of thought.
Consequence, a friend or so.
Closes with the consequence, I marry. He closes with you us. I know the gentleman, I saw him yesterday or t'other day, or then with such and such. And as you say, there was he gaming, there more took his rouse, there falling out of tennis, or perchance I saw him enter such a house of sale, vidulous in a brothel, or so forth. See you now, your bait of falsehood takes this carp of truth. And thus do we of wisdom and of reach with windlasses and with essays of bias by indirections find directions out. So by my former lecture and advice shall do, my son. You have me, have you not?
My lord, I have.
You have by you, fare you well.
Good, my lord.
Observe his inclination in yourself.
I shall, my
And
lord.
let him ply his music.
Well, my lord.
Well,
My lord, my lord.
so now,
Ophelia.
Alas, my lord, I have been so frightened.
With what in the name of heaven?
My lord, as I was sewing in my chamber, Lord Hamlet, with his doublet all unbraced, no hat upon his head, his stockings fouled, ungartered, and down-gyved to his ankle, pale as his shirt, his knees knocking each other, and with a look so piteous in purport, as if he had been loosed out of hell, to speak of horrors, he comes before me.
Men for thy love.
My lord, I do not know, but truly I do fear it.
What said he?
He took me by the wrist, and held me hard, then goes he to the length of all his arm, and with his other hand thus o'er his brow he falls to such perusal of my face as he would draw it. Long stayed he so. At last, a little shaking of mine arm, and thrice his head thus waving up and down, he raised a sigh so piteous and profound as it did seem to shatter all his bulk and end his being. That done, he lets me go, and with his head over his shoulder turned, he seemed to find his way without his eyes, for out of doors he went without their help, and to the last bended their light on me.
Come, go and live. I will go seek the king.